Hi everybody. Hope you're doing well. So I wanna talk to you about my endeavors with IPv6, the alleged new IP addressing system that has been created to solve the IPv4 exhaustion of available addresses, which has happened quite some time ago apparently. So um, I looked into it a bit. Now I got a Starlink service here, and I was intrigued to find that I heard on a YouTube video somewhere else that they're actually doing a beta for IPv6. Well, I don't know about that, but I emailed them, didn't get a response, you know. So I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I read a few up on it a bit. A couple guys had a bunch of different opinions. Some say they got it working. Some say they don't. So anyway, I thought, well, I'll just get a compatible router and plug it in and see what happens. So the first thing I read was that you have to do bypass to get this, and it's true in a sense, but I didn't do that right off because I hate changing things in case it doesn't go well. Then you got to put it all back, and anyway, so I plugged the Starlink Ethernet cable into a router which had LAN ports and Wi-Fi, and turned on IPv6, and immediately I got an IP address. Wow, and I checked it out. Yes, a public IP address now. I've been with carrier grade NAT people for many years now, maybe 4 or 5 years, and it kind of sucks. For years I used to have a static IP here, and I used to run a web server. I had remote access via VPN. I had all the good stuff you get when you have a public IP address on your WAN, and I really missed that. So I thought, I'm going to work on it. So here I am with the router connected, and I got an IPv6 address, and I hook up a couple of Wi-Fi units to it, a couple of desktops, and it doesn't work. What the hell? Anyway, and they get addresses, but it doesn't work. It's really, it's interesting how many addresses that they'll hand out. On the first day, I'm sure I was handed 10 addresses. Now, you know, being in the IPv4 world, you kind of go, wow, nobody gives away 10 addresses that easily. But apparently, there's so many addresses available. Everybody can have 100. But anyway, so I bit the bullet, and I put the Starlink device into pass through or bypass, whatever it's called, where the router on it is inactive. It's just a modem, and sure enough, it all works. On my client, they were all the IPv6 test sites were flawlessly good to go. I got internet on both protocols, so dual stack. It was incredible. However, I discovered some things that I don't like. First of all, um, uh, I've gotten used to being behind NAT with private IP addresses. I feel very vulnerable about having a public IP right on every machine in your network. Although I never achieved that, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes on why that didn't happen. So anyway, let me my network's kind of multi-NAT. So and it all works great. I have a router at the main door, and then I have a DMZ zone, and within that DMZ zone, I have several routers to have separate networks because the kids and the Internet of Things devices. I want them to all be separate from each other, and separate from me, and separate from my business servers and guest client machines that are here for repair. So I have networks for all of them, and I kind of thought, well, there's no NAT with IPv6. Every machine gets a public IP address that you plug into this thing, and that kind of scares me. Are people going to be trying to roll desktop into my my equipment because I got it turned on. How's the firewall going? I went to my favorite firewall testing site, grc.com, and Steve Gibson, I'm ashamed. You're not IPv6 compatible. What the hell? How am I supposed to see that I'm defended when I got no way to test it? And I looked around a bit and I didn't bother with it. But so I tried a few things, some interesting ones. First thing I did was I connected a workstation directly to Starlink, and it worked. And then I added my, I'll call them past the DMZ routers onto the main router, and they got IP addresses, but they don't work. It's like the gateway's not there, and I struggled for days trying to figure out. And I searched around. You look on YouTube or anywhere. There's no videos on how to step by step, start to finish, to be able to put all this together and solve all the problems. All there is videos about guys who work at ISPs and huge data centers and know Cisco commands like they're like the back of their hand, and all they do is talk about how great it is and how easy it's configured, but they don't explain to you to the layman or the end user how to solve problems like why do I get an IP address and no traffic and the gateway, in my opinion, the gateway is wrong because what I discovered is the gateway is a local address. IPv6 is very strange. You get my machines had 5 or 6 IP addresses on them. Some of them public, some of them I'll call them not quite local, internet internal LAN, and then some that are local and not routable, and it's very confusing. And the other thing I noticed too in my firewall, it doesn't identify the machines by name like it does with IPv4. So you don't even know who all these people are. So it gets very scary. So anyway, so I tried a couple other things. I took my router off, and I put a network switch, and then plugged all my routers into it to see if I can get multiple IP addresses, which I did, but they didn't work. It seems to me IPv6 can only go one hop, and I mean that not in an IP address range or IP address configuration, but in a hardware setting. I mean, you can take 3 or 4 switches as long as the internal IP address is different from each other, and put WAN to LAN, WAN to LAN, WAN to LAN, and you can run packets back and forth through them. I mean, it happens on the internet all the time, but IPv6 it doesn't seem to work that way. What's confusing is what's the gateway, and why is that funny number? Because it doesn't work, and I see that funny number anywhere, and that was the same funny number that did work when it was just a single router. So why doesn't it work on the second hop? I don't know. Couldn't find the answer. So I started looking for more modern. The router I'm using is a Linksys E2500. I think it's 10 years old, and it only has one setting: check box to turn it on, and it's automatic. And you don't have to do anything, and it works too. I was shocked. So I tried looking for a wired router, and they don't make them. Everything's got antennas all over it, and they look like upside down spiders lying on their back. And there doesn't seem to be anything professional out there these days that's going to be compatible long term. So the other thing I discovered too is that the firewall that I had, the vendor for, who will remain nameless, is very spotty on. They have individual troubleshooting tips on individual components of it, but again, they don't have a here's how to make our product work with IPv4. And I connected that right to the internet too. and it doesn't work. It can't pass IP addresses through the firewall to the client LAN, so it doesn't work there. And I don't know why. Why does a hardware router? Because this is a software router I'm using on a virtual machine, and it doesn't work. And some other anomalies came along. I tried doing remote desktop sessions by IPv6, and it worked. I was impressed. I logged onto my domain controller, and it was great. But then I patched the domain controller, rebooted it, and it doesn't work anymore, and it hasn't worked since. I can't figure out why, and everything seems to be the same. A couple other things I noticed too with it is that when I originally configured it, it didn't seem to work, and I started troubleshooting it. It seemed that every time I pinged something, suddenly it would start working. And I read that somewhere in a blog somewhere that somebody else knows the same thing. But I think it's come to the point now where um, I got a couple of fears. I still need to have a firewall between me and the outside world. It's very scary when you plug your laptop or whatever into that router, and the thing on Windows pops up. Do you want everyone else in the world to be able to see your computer or not? And you got to say no, so you get a public firewall on your WAN card or on your Wi-Fi, and but it's not comforting though. Um, I want something else in front of me, but that breaks the whole thing. It doesn't work. So everywhere I've deployed anything IPv4, it's always a double NAT at the perimeter with a DMZ zone in the middle and the odd port forwarding required for special purposes. That's the way I've done it for many years, and it's kept me very safe for a long time, and all my clients safe as well. And IPv6 throws that out the window, but they don't tell you what their solution is to keep everything safe. And there's no tools to test to see if they're safe or not. So, um, yeah, and there's some other things I discovered that are very disturbing. Apparently, 43% of the internet currently is dual stack or IPv6. 12 years ago or 11 years ago, 2012, they announced that we're going IPv6 bandwagon was launching and everybody was going to get on it, but it hasn't happened. And I know why it hasn't happened, because it makes you very uncomfortable not having that between you and the outside world, not having a firewall between you and the outside world, and and having public IP addresses all through your LAN. Um, that seems very scary to me. I'm gonna see there's gonna be a lot of problems with that in the future. So, but I think the biggest problem is very few people are on board. Um, my first discovery was most websites I go to don't work in IPv6, because what I did, of course, is I turned off IPv4 to see what it's like, and you can't do anything. There's no VPN. There's half the websites don't load. All the security sites to test your connection don't work. Even some of the IPv6 test sites rely on IPv4 to get started. So what the hell? It's 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 very saddening to see that after a dozen years, nothing has gotten any better. And if it has, it's a big secret, because I couldn't find any kind of help through vendors or individuals. Um, just guys talking about Cisco switches. Well, I don't want to go take a course and go buy a Cisco switch to get this working. I want some small business end user kind of hardware and specific instructions how to get it up, and someone to tell me, is double net or double net dev. What do I need to do to get a firewall that's behind the switch to pass everything through safely and be able to surf the internet with it and have a gateway that works? In other words, I'm waiting for someone to come up with that answer. And particularly, VPN needs to be developed for this protocol, because it doesn't exist apparently. and I'm not into any third-party servers to have remote access to my local area network. So anyway, comments below, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, that's one thing I had to mention. A few minutes back when I talked about putting a unmanaged switch at the WAN, there was no IPv4 available. It was IPv6 only. I don't know why that is. But so that doesn't work because um, I read or heard on YouTube a couple of guys who said they only give you one IP address. You know, they're wrong. You get as many as you like, but the IPv4 still requires the router to work properly, and I don't know why that would be. Because if I put a workstation on, I may have to put the workstation back again and examine it again, make sure I had both protocols available. Maybe I didn't have IPv4 on it, but I'm pretty sure I did. So why does a LAN card on a workstation directly plugged into the Wi or the modem work fine, but a switch or a dumb switch does not work fine? You would at least expect one IP address, wouldn't you? I don't know. Anyway, just wanted to add that in there.